when you think about it, the church really is this crazy, supernatural, idea that only God could devise. And one of the things that strikes me about the church is that, in a sense, we exist for those who are not yet a part of us, right? And that always strikes me that as a church we want to be bent toward going, right? Because we talk about making disciples, but prior to that, Jesus says to go. And I grew up in a church environment where going meant something that you did on a Tuesday evening or a Saturday morning, and you knocked on the doors of strangers and you struck a tract in their face, and you tried to convince them to pray a prayer with you, and that was what going meant in my church, church history, church experience growing up. But really, when Jesus says that we are to go make disciples, literally, what he is saying is, as you go, through your daily life, and we talk about living missionally at Zion, that we are to live as sent ones, because quite literally, that's what we are. As Christ followers, we are called and sent by God to go. And evangelism is another scary word for the church, right? To evangelize the lost. That's a scary thing. The statistics are true. Most people aren't comfortable sharing their faith with others. Most people have never shared their faith with somebody else. But I don't know about you guys. I want to see Zion break through some of those tendencies to not talk openly, about their faith, to not share the gospel often, right? And it begins with this idea of going. It's not about you guys, but what does it look like to kind of live with that go mentality, in your guys' life?
Yeah, and I think for me, there's points of honesty. This summer I was on a sabbatical, and I met with a couple different guys. One of the guys that I met with was in New Jersey, a guy named Samuel Rodriguez. He's a church planting catalyst down in New Jersey, and so we picked a place. He picked Dunkin' Donuts, which I was excited about, and so I drove about 2 hours to meet him, and we started talking a little bit, and then started asking questions about making disciples and about people coming to know the Lord, and he was asking me his questions. As he started asking them, I started squirming in my seat a little bit, because he was asking me questions of, hey, who's the last person who came to know Christ, at your church? Who's the last person you baptized as a result of coming to know Christ? And I, as I'm squirming and I'm starting to dodge, I came to the point, I said, Sam, I got to be honest, I'm not doing very well there. And so part of, this is being honest, and even for Sarah and I, this summer we started, intentionally praying and saying, we need to be praying for open doors. We need to be looking for them. We need to be, and for me, I'm not good at this. And so part of that is, God, I'm not good at this. Help me to be what you want me to be, and to grow. Because it is, like you said, it's hard, it's.
Yeah. Well, why is it so difficult for Christians to share the greatest news ever given to mankind? Why is it we share, goofy stories on Facebook, right? We got the little share button. We got puppy videos. What's the first thing we do? I want to share that. I want to share it with somebody. We do it so easily and so frivolously on social media. Why is it so difficult when it comes to sharing the gospel?
Yeah. I'm with you, Steve, because we talked about gifts the previous week, and if there was a line for evangelism, to get the gift of evangelism, some people cut in front of me because I never got it. And I still to this day, I feel awkward. I remember a guy who discipled me as a young man said, why don't you ever share your faith? And when I finally thought about it more, it came down to two idols that we all still bow down to. One's the idol of comfort. To put yourself out there, to share your faith, it's not comfortable. It is really good news. It should be easy, but for some reason, it feels uncomfortable. We don't want to be thought of as weird. We don't want to be thought of as awkward. We're thinking we're doing a good job, whatever that is. But the other one is that God of privacy, where, again, we don't want to do something that opens our home up or opens our life up to other people. We get home from work, we're good, we want to just relax, and we want to be private. But yet to open up to the most important thing of our life. And it's not just the evangelism, it's also going beyond our community, even going overseas or learning another language or taking a short-term trip. Those things are uncomfortable too. So they're difficult, but they're not insurmountable. And even though we might say, well, I don't have the gift of evangelism, you're not exempt. I'm not exempt. Because we're all called to go, regardless. But it is something, if we're to be honest, if we're to look at Zion as a whole, this is the one we struggle with the most. Not just personally, but let's face it, as a church. And I know you said it for your campus, I could say that for our campus, and
Sure.
I'm sure we could say that for Clarion, but this is the one where we struggle the most.
Was anybody learning? Has anybody taken any, healthy steps, growing in the area of evangelism, of going with more intentionality?
Well, I guess one thing, we've talked about how busy life is, and you're going to add more time to do whatever. I believe, what I'm learning is that wherever I'm, at my regular rhythm and routine of life, in the office, wherever I'm out in the community, that's the place. I don't have to go. I mean, isn't it fair to say that most people walking by us, they're not going to heaven? I mean, we don't know that, but how do we know? So just, my regular rhythm, being aware of what's happening around me,
Yeah.
more than not. Now, I'm with you. I'm battling that, but that's the starting point for me. I don't feel like I need to go running off somewhere. I just need to deal with what's right before me, and pay attention. And God's working around us every day, all day, myself included, and just be aware, of that and build relationships. But yeah, it's a battle.
And I think, and that's what I'm saying. I mean, part of it, am I even asking God? Am I saying, God, open up the door so I even see it instead of being focused on what I'm doing? And so I think that's, part of it, asking God, open up a door. Because even though I might be scared in this moment, I would rather be obedient, and I fear you more than what anybody else thinks or says. I want to fear you more. Not because you're going to smash me, but because you are the Most High God.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, for me, the one thing that is helping me be more aware of living as a missionary is, now I'm I work in the community. I have I'm bivocational in that sense, and so, and my work in that area puts me in much closer proximity to people who are far from God in a more consistent, regular basis. And I think trying to build those relationships, trying to get to know them, listen to their stories, again, praying, looking for opportunities has helped me. Because honestly, as a pastor, sometimes it's difficult because if we're not careful, we can spend all of our time with other Christians. Mm-hmm. And I think the same thing is true with people who've been following Jesus for a long time. Is our circle of friends change? Mm-hmm. Our who we spend time with changes. And I think one of the things that we have to, challenge ourselves with is the question of who are my friends who are far from God? Do I have relationships with people who aren't like me? Mm-hmm. And that takes real intentionality, on all of our parts, But again, we have to ask the question, what could Zion be? What could we look like as a church if corporately, from A to Z, every one of us understood the commission to live on mission? What could we look like, Tom? I don't know.
Yeah, I think it would be very different than what we see today, for sure. And we'd see that, individually, we're going to be so blessed that it's going to be hard to shut us up if we adopt this mentality and we're holding each other accountable, and that we want to be like Jesus, and we want to be like Paul, and we've got all these mentors and all these people that have shown us how to do this. That I think sometimes you guys have all talked about, the fear or the private worlds, and so we've been kind of conditioned that we don't want to intrude in anybody's space. That we got to stay here, stay away, because it's, we don't want to offend, we don't want to, but we have a story of hope and a story of life, and just think what the circles of influence that we have, whatever that is, whether it's work, sports, school, if people could really see a difference in me, then they may ask, what's wrong with you? What's different about you? And that may give us the opportunity, but I think it would be a tremendous thing to be a part of a church that everybody was on mission to go.